If you're at a point with Canvas where you now know how to create pages, but your pages look kind of boring like this, and you want to have your pages look a little nicer like this, in this video I'm going to show you how to create a button. Now this is a button on my page, and when people click on it, it takes them to another page within my Canvas site. Buttons like this make your pages look better, and it also makes it easier for students to navigate them. So first of all, I want you to understand that a button on a page, it's simply a picture. This is a picture that I've made, and I've hyperlinked it to another page. I'm going to take you through two ways to make buttons. One is for simpler buttons, and one is for buttons that are as personalized or customized as you want them to be. The first way to make a button, and the easiest way to make a button, is using a website such as this, thebuttonfactory.com. Websites like this usually will have a template for a button. And what you can do is you can customize your button within the parameters of the site. So let's say that I want a button for Unit 1. In the text, I typed Unit 1, and for this site in particular, I have to click off of the text, and now it has shown up on my template. I want to change the font maybe to something different. I can make the font larger if I would like. I could change the color of the font if I wanted. There are some other features with shadow and size. Also with the style and the corners, if you want the corners rounded or straight. And then with the background colors. So you can change the colors if you want a gradient or if you want them solid, however you want it. So this is how we have created our button from thebuttonfactory.com, and we have two choices. Our first choice is that we can download this image to our computer, and if we do that, it becomes an image that we will then have to upload to Canvas, which we can do, but if we're going straight to Canvas, then a simpler way to do it is to choose this Embed button. And when we have Embed, it gives us the HTML coding, but it also gives us just this URL to this. So I'm going to copy the URL for this particular button, which sounds a little crazy because we think of URLs as websites, but this URL is connected to this picture that we've made, this button that we've made. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this URL. You can right click and copy, or I usually highlight it and choose on the computer, hold down Control and C for copy. And then when I come to my page, this is a page that I'm going to edit. I'll scroll to where I want it to be on the page, so I'll add another button down here, and I want it centered on the page. And so what I'm going to do now is this button from the rich text editor bar at the top says Embed Image, so I'm going to select Embed Image, and I have some options, these different tabs that I can choose. For this button that I've made though, it has the URL, which I've already copied, so I'm going to click and Control V for paste. You have an option to change dimensions and things, but really you don't need to bother with that right now because once you save it and have it in your page, it's not going to be a problem for you. You can resize it from there. So I'm going to choose Update, and now here's my button. So I'll put it in the center like I wanted it. And I can resize this, and again I just highlighted the button. I can resize it and make the button larger or smaller, however I want it to be. Now remember what I said before, that with the button, all a button is just an image that's been hyperlinked. So on this button that I've created, I'm going to highlight this button, and you can come up to the top for the rich text editor. You can choose Link to URL if you would like, and that will take you and let you link it to another website. But for me, what I like to do is I want this button to be, let's say I want this page to be a cover page for my website, and so I'm going to have this button link to another page within the website. Over here on the right side, and remember this is still highlighted, over here on the right side I have some choices for links, files, and images, and content on the pages. These are the pages that I've built within my site on Canvas. If you haven't built any extra pages yet, if this is your first page, then you won't have as many options here. You won't have any options because you haven't built pages. So what we're going to do is I'm going to choose one of these pages I've already built. Let's say that I want, say that I have a Unit 1 page. I'm going to say this build a page. When I click on this, now it doesn't look like anything happened. However, what will happen is when I save the page and I view it, when I come down to the bottom where that button's located and I click, it's going to take me to the page that I linked it to within my Canvas site. So this is how you can create these buttons. Now, the button that we just created from the Button Factory was a pretty simple button. So let's say that you want more customized buttons. I'm going to show you how to do that next using PowerPoint. Now keep in mind that everything that we do in PowerPoint can also be done using Google Slides. However, you'll have a lot more options in PowerPoint. So I still choose to create within PowerPoint. We're going to start by opening a new PowerPoint presentation, and we'll need to change the size of our slide depending on what we want. So let's say if on my page I wanted a square button, I would need to make a square slide. The way to do this may look different depending on the computer version that you're using of PowerPoint. And so what we're going to do is I'll show you a couple of different ways that it could look. This in PowerPoint 2010 has a tab up here that says Design. When I click on the Design tab, in the top left corner I have Page Setup, and I'm going to select Page Setup. The slide is set to 10 inches wide and 7.5 inches tall. So I'm going to change this, and let's say that I want a small button 1 inch by 1 inch. So I'll change this to 1 by 1 and click OK. And notice now my slide has changed to a square, and it's going to be 1 inch by 1 inch. It's just going to create a smaller file whenever I save this, and whenever I add it to Canvas later, it's going to by default be a smaller picture because I've done 1 by 1 as opposed to 10 by 10. And notice down here, I'm currently viewing it at 400%, so it's zoomed in quite a bit. That makes it easier for working, so just keep in mind that your picture won't actually be this large if you set it to 1 inch by 1 inch. Now another thing that I want to point out is if you have a different version of PowerPoint, this is an example of what another version looked like. I didn't have the Design tab, and so instead I had to go to File and Page Setup. And so if you go to File and Page Setup, you'll get that same screen that we just worked with a second ago. So now that we have our PowerPoint slide resized to the way that we want it, what we can do is start editing the slide. So I am going to change the font and the text on here, and I'll call this a test button. And let's say that I want to change the background on this slide. I'm going to go back to the Design, Background Styles, and you can choose one of these that are already here. You can also choose Format Background. So if you choose something that has a gradient fill background, within the Format Background you could change the color so that doesn't have to be gray. Let's say that I want to choose a solid dark blue background. You also have choices here of you can make gradient or pattern filled backgrounds. You can add a picture if there's a certain picture that you want to have as the background for your button. One word of caution though, whenever you're creating these buttons, is that remember that a button is small, so you don't want to add too many details or make it too complex. And remember that text is usually the most important part of the button, so we want to make sure to keep that the focus. So here I've changed the background to blue, and this font, I want to change the font and make it look a little more exciting. And I want to make the font larger. So there we go. I'm going to resize my box just to make it easier to center. And then let's say I want to change the text color to white. And this button is still a little bit boring, so I am going to add a shape to this one. You can do just a border, or let's say I'm going to add this whole rectangle. And by right-clicking, I can send this to the back. And so now here in just a few seconds, I've created this test button. And it has these different components to it. Again, you can make it as complex as you want to, as personalized as you want to. This one still looks better than the buttonfactory.com's. So you can play around with this and make it as complex as you want. Now what we need to do is we need to save this PowerPoint slide as a JPEG. And a JPEG just means an image file. So what we're going to do is choose File, Save As, and I'm going to choose, I want to save this to my desktop, and Test Button is a fine name for it. Now when it says Save as Type, instead of saving it as a PowerPoint, here's the part that's going to switch it to a picture or an image for us. And it's really not hard to do because you're familiar with saving documents probably. The only thing is we're going to change the type, and we're going to change it to a JPEG. You could also do a PNG. JPEG is going to give you a higher quality picture. So we're going to choose JPEG and save. You'll get a message that asks if you want to export every slide in the presentation or only the current slide. In this case, it's also worth mentioning that as you're going, if you want to add more slides, you can always add more slides, and you can come back and you can change these slides, and they'll all keep that same format. So if we had multiple buttons we had created, we would choose every slide. For us, though, we just have this one, so we're going to choose current slide only. And now we should have, on our desktop, we have our test button, and it's an image, a picture now. And notice that it is pretty small. So the next step is going to be adding this image that we've made to our Canvas page. Now, some of these steps are going to be similar to whenever we did the Button Factory. And for this one, though, the first thing we need to do is we need to add that picture file to our Canvas files. So whenever we're here, we have some choices. Whenever you're in a course, you have Files here. If we choose this, then this is going to save the picture file only to this particular course. Sometimes you might want to save pictures or other documents to a particular course because it will help organize your documents. For me, I don't have a whole lot of documents that I'm adding, so instead of saving it just to this particular course, the other thing you can do is to choose Account and select Files. Now when I choose Account and Files, this shows all of the buttons and things that I've made, all of my files for everything that I've done. And I am going to upload the picture that I created. Remember, I had it on the desktop, so I just navigate and find the test button and double click. And now it is uploading to Canvas. And it might take a minute. This one added very quickly. So now I'm going to go back to my course page that I wanted, and you can add more than one image at once. So my suggestion would be, in your PowerPoint slides, go ahead and create all the buttons that you're going to need at once. You can export them all at once, and then you can upload them to Canvas again all at once. I'm going to go to the page that I want and select Edit. Another tip, whenever you're adding these buttons, you'll notice that here I added a table because I wanted my buttons to be formatted and aligned with each other. Sometimes they can get a little bit off. And so I inserted a table up here at the top, and the table's automatically resized depending on what's inside. So you'll notice if you do this, whenever you put one picture in, the next column might get very skinny until you add the next picture. So just be patient with those tables because it will do what you want it to do. But this is just a suggestion for what you can do to organize and format your buttons. So now, again, like before, I'm going to go where I want the image to be, and I am going to choose Embed Image. Now remember last time with debuttonfactory.com, we copied and pasted the URL. This time we're going to select Canvas, tab. If you saved the image just to this course's files, it will be here. For me, remember, I selected account over here, so I'm going to select my files. And as I scroll down, I'll have that button available, and I'll click on it. And you can double click or you can click it and update. And so now here's my little button. Now as I'm looking at this one, this looks a little bit grainy, so it probably would be worth it. If I was going to make this button larger, then I would probably want it to, the file when I create it, instead of being 1 inch by 1 inch, if I had done 3 inches by 3 inches or 4 inches by 4 inches, it would be a clearer picture. Like these were done with a larger than 1 by 1 slide. So just be mindful of that. But this one, if I wanted it to be a smaller button, I can resize it and make it smaller. And then same as before, the way to attach or to make it a button is just to attach a hyperlink to this. So you can connect it to a different URL, a different website, or again, over here on the right side, you can choose the page that you want to link to. Again, it looks like nothing changed, but when I go to save, when I scroll down, this picture, this image that I created in PowerPoint is now a button. And so I can click, and the button takes me to a different page. Another thing that's worth mentioning is this header on my website that I used. This is another picture that I created using PowerPoint. I followed the same steps that I shared with you about just resizing a slide, adding the text, making it look like I wanted, and exporting it as a JPEG. The only difference here is that I never linked this to anything. It's just an image. It's just the header for my page. And so you have that option as well to personalize the picture that you want, or you can add other pictures that have already been created if you don't need something specific for you. So I hope that this was a helpful tutorial on how you can create your own buttons like this to add to your pages, and that your pages become better looking and more user friendly.